What receiver on a new team is destined to become a fantasy stalwart in 2019? What AFC South running back could be in for a massive workload? And is Jared Cook going to be a sleeper tight end for the second straight year? Plus, Tyler Jackson, the reigning FFPC 750 Dynasty League number 30 champion, co-host with me tonight as we delve into his team management, the new normal in Cleveland, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Tyler Jackson is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Everybody, if you got what it takes, because I'm KRS and I'm on the mic. And premieres on hardcore hip-hop. Going out to the hardcore.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak.
With the master rhymer, that's the lead behind the video rapper. You know the truck driver, tapper. Down goes another rapper, on to another matter. Punch up the data.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of the Balkaholics, excuse me. Maybe I'm a Balkaholic tonight. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is normally the patron saint of fantasy football, the Dizzle, Dave Gerzak. But tonight, pinch hitting for him is an extra special guest. He's been playing fantasy football and losing money to his friends for the best part of 2 decades. At 2014, he decided to take up the stakes and join the FFPC, where he lost even more money to strangers. The gambler's fallacy told him that he was due, and in 2017, he upped the stakes again and joined a $750 Dynasty League. He is now the reigning champion of said $750 Dynasty League number 30 and a fantasy football expert. In addition to his new role as a fantasy football expert prognosticator, he is a film producer. His latest film, Dragged Across Concrete, starring Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn, is in theaters and streaming now. Please welcome onto the show my co-host for this evening's festivities. It is Tyler Jackson. Tyler, welcome, my man.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and it's great to be here without Dave. You know, I thought he was bringing the show down for a while. It's just me and Eric now, the way it was always meant to be.
Yeah, the focus groups really did not grade Dave good. He got really, really bad reviews. So we've upped the ante tonight with you, my friend. So it'll be fun. It'll be a fun show ahead of us as we delve into a lot of stuff tonight. Coming up, we're going to talk about a sneaky sleeper at the slot receiver position, a new running back in Oakland, and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. You can post any questions you might have in there. Follow the show on Twitter at HSFFR. I'm at Eric Balkman. The show is at Facebook.com/HSFFR. And if you want to give us a call, talk to Tyler and I tonight, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVER. HighStakesFantasyFootball@gmail.com is where to reach us. Producer and mutual friend Rob and audio engineer Bryce do not get the night off. They are working tirelessly. And if you have any questions for us, we're going to try to get them to them in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Reminder to everybody who is looking for some drafting action this weekend, you can find it at myffpc.com. Plenty of best ball, super flex, and double ups available there right now. And we have Dynasty startups forming. You saw the FFPC e-newsletter that went out today. You saw that we have the next startups, I think, are going on April 6th, which is a week from tomorrow. So plenty of time to get in on that before they fill up. And join a couple of maidens. There's some super flexes, some best ball dynasties out there. Whatever you want, you can find it at myffpc.com. Tyler, let's get into it tonight. We already know that you're in the film industry. You have a movie out with Vince Vaughn and
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson's in it.
Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn, I was trying to do something at the same time, and if there's one thing I've learned on this show is do not do two things at once because I'm clearly incapable of it. But Dragged Across Concrete, Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn, tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the film industry and what that's like. Yeah,
so I'm a film producer. It sounds like a really cool job, and it is sometimes. And then for a lot of the other times, it's like, a lot of reading, some boring stuff. But often it's like peppered with moments where you're like, I can't believe I'm sitting here on a movie set and watching Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn do their thing. Dragged Across Concrete is the third film by a director named Craig Zoller, who previously did Bone Tomahawk and Brawl in Cell Block 99, which I'm sure some listeners have seen. And anyway, it's out now. It's about Mel and Vince play two police officers who get suspended from the police force when their antics are recorded on a cell phone, and it kind of blows up, and they get suspended from the police force, and they turn to the dark side to make ends meet. And it's out now. You can buy it on iTunes right after this podcast.
Yeah, yes. Wait till after the podcast, for sure. And then Don Johnson's in this too. This is good stuff. Very good stuff.
Yeah,
Look at his cast.
Don Johnson's in it. He's cool. He makes a little cameo. We also have Jennifer Carpenter, who I love from Dexter. So yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, the sister.
Yeah. That's right.
Laurie Holden
Dexter's
too.
Sister.
She did all those Frank Darabont, Walking Dead and Mist and all that stuff. Wow,
right,
this is good. All right. Now I got to tune back in because otherwise I will go ahead and stream this before the show is over. So I'm gonna put a pin in that, Tyler. Let's get back into FFPC here. You made a big trade first of all, congratulations on your Dynasty win last year. Big applause to you for that. Let's talk about the big trade you made in late September of last year. It was for Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, this had a massive impact on you winning the league last year. I look at this trade now, and maybe it was a little bit different back then, but you traded Ryan Fitzpatrick, your first, second, and third rounders this year in exchange for Mahomes. And if you remember, I believe that's when Fitzpatrick was running white hot last year in place of Jameis Winston. So you deal him right at the right time, and then your top three picks. I feel like if you had to do this over again, you do this 10 times out of 10, right?
Yeah, of course. It sounds like a slam dunk now. I'm sure everyone listening is like, yeah, this is an obvious trade. And I guess it was even back then. But, I drafted Mahomes in our startup draft in 2017. And just due to the structure of FFPC, the short benches, I couldn't keep him through 2017. And, of course, right after I cut him, the Chiefs dealt Alex Smith, and the rest is history. And I was sitting there before the 2018 rookie draft trying to get Mahomes from someone who smartly picked him up right at week 17 or something like that. And I offered a second round rookie pick, and the owner of him actually flipped him for a higher second round rookie pick. So then I knew he was going to be great. I start watching the games. We get to like week 2 or week 3, and I'm like, I can't stomach the thought of not having Patrick Mahomes on my team for the next decade or two. So I just gave whatever needed. I proposed the first, second, and third round pick, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was at that moment the top quarterback, I think top fantasy quarterback at that time, but obviously, he's old and he's Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I flipped that, and the trade partner pretty much just wanted a different third-round pick because I had 2, and I hit it immediately. And, yeah, the rest is history. I wouldn't trade Patrick Mahomes probably for any player. And it's funny because I think in Dynasty and FFPC, quarterbacks in 1 QB leagues are slightly underrated. But if you get a difference maker like Mahomes on your team, you really see dividends week to week versus, guys that are starting even pretty good fantasy quarterbacks like a Phillip Rivers or something like that.
Yeah, no, and you make a great point. I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes and where he's going, just even in redraft leagues right now, way, way, way higher than the next best quarterback coming off the board. So every single week, like you said, you're going to have a massive advantage at the quarterback position, given the numbers he puts up. So kudos to you on a great deal. It seems like as we move to the backfield, or stay in the backfield, I guess, as it were, I bring this up every week, and perhaps this is because this is me trying to pick fantasy players' brains for what I should do in one of my dynasty leagues where I own Todd Gurley. But he's got a reported arthritic knee. I think it's going to be telling what the Rams do in the upcoming NFL draft, how high they draft a running back. I know they just matched the offer sheet for Malcolm Brown, so he'll be back in the fold as Gurley's backup or what have you. I don't know what the C.J. Anderson story is for 2019, but Gurley, owning him, have you been shopping him? Have you been listening to offers? Is he, do you feel like he's going to be fine? How do you feel about Gurley heading into this year from a dynasty perspective?
Yeah, it's the big question that every Gurley owner is asking themselves. I was perfectly fine staying pat, and then, the arthritis news just keeps piling up, and I made a panic offer for Todd Gurley, for Tyreek Hill, straight up, obviously before the Tyreek Hill news came out, and it wasn't accepted. I was thinking about, a stack with Mahomes, and okay, obviously the Chiefs are making murmurs of giving him the biggest wide receiver contract ever, again, before the allegations. So, I thought it was a decent deal for both, and the Tyreek Hill owner didn't go for it, and I'm kind of glad. Obviously, now I'm glad he didn't. That owner ended up sending Tyreek Hill for T.Y. Hilton and 2 second-rounders in 2019. So he's obviously got spooked and panicked, and I thought that was I thought it was a good deal if Tyreek Hill goes to jail or something else happens with him, but we'll see what happens there. But back to Gurley, I think that all we can do at this point is just stand pat. He's going to get some stem cells shot into his knee or some other kind of crazy stuff's happening. I don't even know if Malcolm Brown's going to be the handcuff to own. I don't think anyone really knows right now. I think we just kind of have to hope that the offseason does him well and that he's still in that getting the workload that, will put him in that RB1, solid RB1 territory for years to come.
I don't think I would. I think I would give Gurley up for Barkley and for probably. I think I'd probably do it with McCaffrey. I think I would with McCaffrey. I think it's interesting what you do when it comes to Elliott and David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, and then I think you're in the territory of Gurley and. One of those players and something else for Gurley. I think that's the territory that we're in right now, and we'll see what happens. But I think I'm with you on this. I'm gonna roll the dice and stand pat, and hopefully it's okay. And I think we will get our answer coming up after the NFL draft at the end of April. I mean, if the Rams invest in a day 3 running back or no running back at all, well, there's your answer. And Gurley's probably going to be fine. But if they do take somebody on day 2, yikes, red flags are going off for me for sure. We'll see what happens. A team that has been probably the most discussed in fantasy circles and really in NFL circles this offseason so far has been the Cleveland Browns. And you own a couple of significant pieces from their offense on your championship team, wide receiver Jarvis Landry and tight end David Njoku. Now, they bring in Odell Beckham. And I feel like you are not the first person I've asked. I think Tim Gilbertson, when he was on the show last week, he also owned Landry and Njoku in one of his dynasty leagues, and I asked him a similar question. How do you think Beckham's arrival affects the fantasy prospects going forward for both Landry and Njoku?
I think that one of Njoku or Landry will benefit from ODB being there, and I think it will hurt the other one. I don't think both will necessarily benefit, but I also don't know which one is going to get the pop. Jarvis Landry is a conundrum because he is has just been undervalued by the Dynasty community for years. Even when he had his, he was number 4 ranked FFPC receiver in 2017. Last year, he was one of the least efficient, if not the least efficient player in the league. He was number 19 in scoring, even though he had 148 targets. So I think it probably helps him to, go back to, he was playing in the slot a lot already, but not to try to force him to be that alpha dog, wide receiver 1 on the team and have him play the slot complementary role. I think that probably does help him and free him up to do his Jarvis Landry things, volume receiver things. Njoku is just like a guy who's been dealing with a little bit of dropsies, but has been progressing really well. I mean, he's still super young. I think he's 22 years old, something like that. And, from rookie season, 110 FFPC points to last year, 171 points, with not that, a slight increase in volume. But I think he's just progressing, and I think we can expect a solid tight end 1 season for him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the top 5 this year in tight ends.
Dave Gerzak, and I think he said it on this show, he views this Cleveland offense, I don't think he put it at the same level of Kansas City, but as far as points and yardage, he thinks they're going to chew it up like the Kansas City Mahomes team did. I mean, there's just weapons everywhere. And you consider that they have the big eaters in the trenches doing the great job for Nick Chubb, and when Kareem Hunt gets back there, not to mention Duke Johnson too. You have all these pass catchers. We could see a ton of points in Cleveland, and dare I say, the Browns could be one of the most picked over offenses when we get to Vegas in September with the FFPC main event drafts. We could see a lot of these guys moving up the boards, Chubb and Landry, and obviously Beckham's already up there. And Njoku, I think you made a lot of strong points on there too that I happen to agree with. So Cleveland is going to be a team to watch, no question, as we move throughout draft season. Here with Tyler Jackson on the FFPC High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I'm Eric Balkman, no Dave Gerzak tonight. Tyler Jackson was the 750 number 30 champion from last year, and we are talking about that title-winning team, including Tyrell Williams, who was on your bench last year for the majority of the season. He's now the second banana in Oakland to Antonio Brown. Are we looking at an uptick in production, given the fact that all the attention that Antonio Brown is going to face from opposing DBs compared to what we saw from Williams with the Chargers the last few seasons? Tyler, your thoughts on Tyrell Williams for 2019?
Everyone's down on this guy. The landing spot wasn't what everyone was hoping for, I guess. And I hear that, but from going from one of the least efficient players in Jarvis Landry now to one of the most efficient players on a target basis, Tyrell Williams, only 64 targets last year. He's still turning in, over 650 yards, 41 catches on 64 targets. Phillip Rivers never thrown him the ball. Now he's in playing second banana, as he said, to the best receiver in the game. There's quarterback questions there, but you've got to think that they're going to be throwing him the ball more than Phillip Rivers was, because Oakland lost 100 targets with Jared Cook, 88 targets with Jordy Nelson, Amari Cooper. There's no one else to throw the ball to besides Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams. So someone's got to get it, and I got to think that Tyrell Williams is gonna get it, and when he gets targets, he gets catches and scores touchdowns. I mean, he's not gonna be anyone's top pick, but for the value you're getting for Tyrell Williams right now, especially when people are down on his landing spot, it makes sense to see what he does, come week 1, week 2.
Tyrell Williams going at the 14.05 currently in FFPC best ball draft. Certainly a smart way to spend a draft pick there, especially in that type of format where you have Tyrell Williams is an explosive guy. He's made a lot of big chunk yardage, big explosive touchdowns for the Chargers over the course of his career, and he moves to Oakland now. Probably with not as great of a quarterback, but certainly I think a better situation, as you pointed out, Tyler. I think he is in for a pretty good year, and I'm sure he'll be on a few of my teams for sure.
it's crazy how undervalued he is in best ball, especially in best ball. This is a guy who should be going way higher than that. Look at his air yards per target. This is a guy who can win you best ball leagues. I wouldn't know because I've, again, never won a best ball league, but he probably could win you best ball leagues.
It seems to reason, right? It stands to reason that he'd be able to win you leagues with the type of and we'll see what Oakland does with their defense. Sometimes the best friend of a wide receiver is a poor defense on the other side of the football, so he can keep getting those targets, keep getting that yardage. We'll see what happens there with Oakland.
Great
That's another compelling team that we're going to be watching this year as well. I think there's a lot of moving pieces there. Two of your other receivers on this squad, they have switched jerseys over the course of the last couple of months as well. Adam Humphries has moved north from Tampa to find a home in Nashville. And then Deshaun Jackson moves all the way back up to Philly as he will be catching passes from Carson Wentz this year in an Eagles uniform. Of those two players, which one do you think has the better season this year between Humphries as a Titan and Jackson as an Eagle?
I think Adam Humphries, no question, as a week-to-week possible starting player for your fantasy team will definitely be better than Deshaun Jackson. Adam Humphries is a great route runner, chain mover. The Tennessee Titans, receiving core is Corey Davis and then no one to my eye. So I think he slots in perfectly into the slot and will just be that chain-moving, reliable guy that Mariota has never had on the Titans or hasn't had in a while. And so, I'm looking for just that consistent week-to-week performance from him. I think Deshaun Jackson in Philly he's got some Philly magic, but, anyone who was investing in Philly receivers the past year knows that it's a frustrating game. So, I'm not really putting a lot of stock into Deshaun Jackson and Philly. Also, I think that the Eagles chose the wrong quarterback. I don't know if I can say it, but Big Dick Nick is definitely the quarterback they should have kept, and they should have shipped Carson Wentz out for a couple of draft picks. But, we'll see. I could be definitely wrong about that, but I look for big things from my good friend Big Dick Nick and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Can I say that on the show? Is that cool?
Yeah, you can listen. Listen, we're on the internet, so there's no rules here. I mean, this is basically whatever you want to do. Deshaun Jackson, as far as FFPC ADP goes right now, he is going at the 1609. Adam Humphries is going in front of him, not by much though. Adam Humphries at the 1508, looking like a nice little value there right now if you want to jump in and draft. And I always say this every year, if you jump in these best balls right now, I think you can get a lot of good value on a lot of players because there's a lot of people out there that aren't paying attention or the information isn't as prevalent as it's going to be come August and September. But Adam Humphries in the 15th seems pretty sweet.
Yeah. He finished at the 24th overall. Sorry to cut you off. Adam Humphries finished
go ahead.
24th overall wide receiver in FFPC last year. It's I don't think you're getting much better value than that in the 15th round.
Yeah, and the thing is like we're always after all these receivers that have this heavy target volume. It's the same thing I say about running backs all the time. It's like if you don't catch passes, it's going to be difficult for me to get very interested to be in business with you for fantasy football purposes. And when you have all these slot guys, and we're going to get to another one in the NFC East that I think is very intriguing this upcoming season a little bit later on in the show, but Humphries is going to catch a lot of balls there, and I really, Delaney Walker's he's got to be coming up on the end. I'm starting to think that we're never. I shouldn't say I'm starting to think. I'm pretty sure Corey Davis is never going to develop into the player I hoped he would be. I still think he's going to be very good, but just not to the level that I was hoping. And then you have Adam Humphries, who is going to do a good job moving the chains this year for Tennessee. I mean, they're paying him a lot of money to do that, and he certainly has the capability to, no doubt. I want to get back to Antonio Brown here for a second, Tyler. And how does that affect JuJu SmithSchuster? The fact that now instead of playing opposite Antonio Brown, he's going to be playing opposite either Dante Moncrief or James Washington. You have JuJu SmithSchuster on this team. He's obviously massive last year. Do you think that because of the volume increasing, or at least it should be increasing for JJSS, does that mean better things for him in comparison to last year, or does the fact that he's going to have this extra defensive attention cause him to have a worse season? How do you – I mean, which way is he sliding this year? Is he going up or is he going down?
Well, I think it's hard to even go up from where he was this past year, but if I had to pick one of those, I do think he goes up. He had maybe with no more volume, though. He had 166 targets last year, only behind Antonio Brown, 169 targets. So JuJu's going to get fed the ball for sure, because those targets have to go elsewhere. And I think Dante Moncrief stinks. I don't think he's a very good football player. And I think that James Washington also might be not so good at football. So, but what I'm banking on is Ben Roethlisberger having an FU type season and just saying, okay, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, you guys don't want to play with me? That's cool. I got JuJu, and we're going to run up the scores on people. And I think that JuJu's got something. He wants to prove that he's an alpha dog, wide receiver one as well. And so, yeah, I bank on Ben having a lot to prove this year, and as well as JuJu. And I think that lock him in as a wide receiver one. I don't think that just because of, the cornerback he's going up against, there's going to be a drop off there.
And I'll always bet on volume. Any time that you're going to be the number one guy, I always would rather have that than being the number two and getting, quote unquote, less defensive attention. I had not considered that Roethlisberger angle, because this is a guy that has had both Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. I don't want to say throw him under the bus, but have choice words for him, strong words for him to the media. And Roethlisberger, to me, strikes me as the type of guy that really doesn't care a whole lot what people think about him. But I think when teammates are doing this to him, I think that would affect him a little bit, and in a good way, in sort of like now you've activated the Super Saiyan Roethlisberger type way, where he's just, like you said, he could have just a big FU season. JuJu SmithSchuster catches 130 balls. You have Vance McDonald getting 9 touchdowns. James Conner, wrecking stuff as a top 10 running back this year. See, I mean, you make great points. And that Pittsburgh defense, we talked about this earlier with the Raiders defense. It's not like the Steelers defense is insurmountable. I mean, they should give up a lot of points this year, especially facing Cleveland twice. And you look at the rest of their schedules, it's not exactly a bunch of lowly offenses that they're facing. So I think that Roethlisberger point is really, really good. And in fact, I'm looking up his ADP right now because I don't think it's very high. He is going at the 902. Okay, so that's higher than I thought. But I mean, there's still plenty of. I mean, he's right in that sweet spot where he could definitely outplay that ADP, no question, going forward on this season.
This is a prideful 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback whose teammates, whose top, most talented teammates are saying that he's the problem and all of this stuff. So he's coming out with a vengeance, I believe.
Talking with Tyler Jackson here, the 750 number 30 champion in the FFPC last year, sitting in for David A. Gerzak tonight. We haven't talked to rookies a whole lot, and I'm curious as to how your approach has been, given that you don't have first, second, or third. At least I don't think. I know you traded your first, second, or third round picks last year. I'm not sure if you acquired anybody else's going into the season. Have you scouted the rookies much, knowing that you would have to give up assets to get back in to that first round to draft some of these potential difference makers? Or are you still monitoring some of these guys, seeing that maybe they would be worthwhile sneaking up and moving up in the draft to grab them? Any rookies sticking out to you so far this year, Tyler?
It's a great thing sometimes not to have any rookie picks until 312 is my first one. So I, haven't done as much homework as I normally would at this point, because I'm just not seeing anyone I'm really excited about trading 2020 picks. I mean, a lot of people are talking about, 2020 draft picks being incredibly strong already. So, my attention is more been on the kind of free agent, veteran acquisitions I could start thinking about in the third, fourth, fifth rounds of the rookie draft. But yeah, I think that, DK Metcalf, whenever got really excited because he's obviously an incredibly athletic man. I think that it's just one of these guys who's primed to be a disappointment for fantasy teams. I'm really glad I don't have one of those first few picks because I think he's going to Buffalo. I think it's like got Buffalo written all over it, and he's going to Buffalo at 9, and then he's gonna, be catching those ice balls that are gonna be going all over the place, and it's just, it's not gonna be. I'm predicting. I'm looking into my crystal ball, and I'm predicting it's not going to be the type of rookie that people want to be investing high assets in.
Yeah, I'm not a DK Metcalf guy either, and I feel like if he ends up, being like David Boston 2.0, I'm going to be like, well, why didn't I like him? And the thing is, as I look deeper into this, like, there's no question he is uber strong. There's no question he is insanely fast. The question I have, and this is something that has dogged receivers like him in the past, is his ability to change direction, to get open, that sort of lateral cut on a dime. Part of the reason that, he's not able to is he is carrying a lot of weight and a lot of muscle. And once he gets his body going, which, we've seen his straight line speed, he runs a great 40. Once he gets cranked up, he really can blow by you. But if you don't have the threat of breaking off those routes into getting open on hitches and crossing patterns and slants and what have you, then your speed and your size and your strength is nullified a little bit. And I think that's what's going to happen with DK Metcalf.
Yeah, everyone go watch the 3-cone drill. It's a funny watch. Tom Brady beat him has a faster 3-cone. That's troubling. It's also troubling that he wasn't even the best receiver on his own team in college. So, to expect, because he ran a really fast 40 and he's super strong, to expect that he's going to come in and be a, wide receiver 1 in his rookie or second year, it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But yeah, I'm with you on the 3. I know people say like, well, he slipped a little bit on his 3-cone. Okay, well, you can slip in the NFL too when you're running a route. I've seen it happen. And so I guess the thing is, like, when it comes down to Dynasty, Tyler, and I don't know what your philosophy is on this, but I really don't like going into a rookie draft and feeling compelled to take a player because that's where he's going or because everybody else says that's the pick. I'm more like, sometimes I'll do that in redraft because who cares? It's 1 year or whatever, and you don't want to overthink it. I will overthink it in Dynasty. I want to draft. I just right before I did this show, I was on the Dynasty 101 podcast with Dave Sherney, and we were talking about Dynasty is all about, I think more so than redraft, more so than anything is you want to draft players that you want to root for. You want to draft players that you want to see well. You want to draft guys that you enjoy watching play football. And I feel like I might be wrong on DK Metcalf, but I'm okay with that. I've made my peace with it. I think the play is, there's probably going to be a few guys in your league that like DK Metcalf, and one of them is probably going to be willing to move up a few spots to grab him, and that might be the play right there. It's just if you don't like him and that's where he's going to go, wait till you're on the clock, trade out of the pick, get some assets for it, and move on, and know that you're going to grab a guy that you like better than Metcalf. At least that's my take on it. Like, if he falls to me, I don't want to pick him, but I know somebody else probably will, and that's when I move the pick. Yeah, Eric, it's a really great point. I have a rule in fantasy, a gentleman's rule. I only want gentlemen on my team. Anyone with a history of trouble with the law or drugs or domestic violence, especially in Dynasty, it can blow up in your face really quickly. That's why it's so funny. I offered that Tyreek Hill deal, and then as if to remind me of my he didn't accept it, and as if to remind me of my gentleman's rule for my Dynasty team, it's coming out that Tyreek Hill may have allegedly abused his own 3-year-old son. It can an asset can turn and just blow up in your face so quickly that you really. It's also better when you have an investment in guys that you like rooting for and they turn out to do well. That's something really sweet about that, especially as you draft rookies and you're invested in them, and then they give you some dividends later on. That's an awesome feeling.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. I mean, like, how awesome, I think about guys like I liked having on my dynasty teams, either currently or back in the day, guys like you like rooting for, Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Jordy Nelson, Rob Gronkowski, guys I love watching play, the way they play the game and how much fun they have. And these guys aren't, getting, into brawls at bars at 2 a.m. They're not, out, abusing women or what have you. And in fact, in many cases, like with Fitz and Brees and Jordy Nelson, and these guys are doing the opposite. They're doing a lot of stuff for the community. And not that I look at that, when I have to make a decision to better my dynasty team, but it certainly makes it easier when I'm cheering for those guys on Sunday as opposed to, players I'm not, and I don't want to lump DK Metcalf into that, because there's been no reports of him like that. But he's just a guy that I don't envision myself being too excited to, especially if he does go to Buffalo. And I'm with you. It's that pick screams Buffalo. I mean, it really does. And I will not wake up on Sunday morning. I have no doubt. It seems like it. They have Josh Allen who can throw it a country mile. It just seems like it's such a Bills move to do something like that, and we'll see what happens. I mean, we're about a month away. Things could change, but definitely I'm intrigued to see where Metcalf goes at a minimum. Let's get to a couple of emails here, Tyler, that came in for you personally. This is Norm in Roland, Pennsylvania. He writes, what's the best value among all 3 of the big receivers from the Rams? Thanks, Tyler. That is Norm in Roland, Pennsylvania. So I can tell you right now, as I look at the FFPC ADP, Brandon Cooks is currently going at the 410 in FFPC redraft in best ball. Robert Woods goes a little bit after that at the 504, and Cooper Kupp is going at the 508. So they're actually all pretty bunched up. I don't know if there's a particular value between those 3 receivers since they are going so close to each other. Do you have a favorite this year, Tyler, between Kupp and Woods and Cooks?
Let me start out by saying that I'm a lifelong diehard Seattle Seahawks fan. Go Hawks. So I don't have a favorite of the Rams. I hate them all equally. But of those 3, for dynasty purposes, it's got to be Cooper Kupp. We saw the regression that Jared Goff had without Cooper Kupp on the field, and the Rams offense entirely without Cooper Kupp on the field. It's funny that his ADP is the lowest of the 3. I think that he definitely provides the most week-to-week auto start value, which is another thing I love. Having a team where you're not sweating your lineup so much, because that kind of thing can drive you crazy. You need, your studs that you just are going to start week to week, and you're not worried so much about the matchup. And I think that's what Cooper Kupp gives you when he's healthy and on the field. And by all accounts, it looks like he'll be healthy for 2019.
Yeah, it seems like everything's progressing. He's either ahead of schedule or on schedule, depending upon what outlet you read. So you always like to see that too. And I don't, sometimes I won't get into the whole Cooper Kupp thing, but I'm with you. I like him. I know Dave's a big fan of Cooper Kupp as well. And I actually thought, coming off the ACL, he might be more of a discount. But he ended up, if we see him play, early on in the preseason, he actually could move. It wouldn't shock me at all if he moved ahead of both Cooks and Woods on that team as far as ADP goes, and he's the first guy chosen. He was going to be on pace for a pretty epic year last year until he went down. So it's certainly a position that we'll be monitoring as far as the Rams wide receivers going forward into draft season. One more email here for you, Tyler, before we move on. This is from Marshall in Detroit. Is it Marshall Mathers? I don't know. It's entirely possible. Eminem's a big listener for this show. Is Hunter Henry going is Hunter Henry going too high in FFPC drafts right now? And in redraft best ball, Hunter Henry is going at the 407, so the mid-4th, and I believe that makes him, yes, it does indeed make him the 4th tight end off the board after Kelsey, Ertz, and Kittle, who are all going in either the 1st or 2nd round. Hunter Henry is the next one off the board in the mid-4th at the 407. Is that too high for him this year? I mean, he came back and played a little bit in the playoffs last year, so it sounds like the knee is going to be okay. But your thoughts on drafting Hunter Henry in the at the 407 spot this year, Tyler?
Feels like a desperation move based on how bad the tight end position was. He's just a big question mark in terms of the skill is there, the talent's there, but how it works with the offense and everything. I think it's one of those desperation moves. It could either turn out to be really smart or like, I can't believe I drafted Hunter Henry in the 4th round. What was I thinking? I personally wouldn't do it. I'd rather sit on it and wait for, even O.J. Howard, who's also coming back from injury, I think provides a lot more value. I don't know exactly where his ADP is, but certainly
Tyler,
lower than the 4th round.
Let me bring that up because there is a glut of tight ends going from the mid-4th to the mid-5th right now, and Hunter Henry is actually the first one off the board. And besides Howard, I mean, all these other guys ended the season healthy. You have Evan Engram at the 410. You have O.J. Howard at the 411, Eric Ebron at the 411, David Njoku at the 505. So the fact that all 4 of those tight ends are going after Hunter Henry, I'm probably, if I miss out, if I was playing in a tight end premium league and I missed out on the top 3 tight ends, it might serve me well just to grab whatever guy is left there. And David Njoku at the 505 to me is, as the last one there, is very, very intriguing to me to get sort of an upper echelon tight end, not paying the upper echelon tight end price in the mid-5th. So that is this tight end ADP, I think it's going to switch within the next couple of months, especially after the NFL draft too. I mean, we'll always see some minor tweaks and changes then. That's something that we'll be monitoring on this show going forward every Friday here. Let's do one more question for you, Tyler, before you and I sort of talk about the new deals and the news around the NFL that's been going on this past week. Can you give us a guy that you're actually going to be staying away from in the early rounds next season, and then a guy, and we'll talk about this from a redraft perspective, not necessarily a dynasty one, but a guy that you're going to be staying away from early on, and then a guy that you think is actually going to be a sleeper, poised to break out or bounce back or really overperform and beat his current draft value this coming season?
Yeah, I will not be owning any shares of Saquon Barkley this coming season in redraft. The Giants are a mess. The offensive line is a mess. He's going to be facing stacked boxes every time he's on the field. I know there's not much else to get the ball to, but it's just not setting up as a formula for success with running backs. So, yeah, Saquon Barkley is being way overdrafted. I know he's a great talent. I would love to have him on my dynasty team, but this coming season is going to be a nightmare for the Giants offense. And that's the one player that I'm staying away from, that everyone seems to still love.
Do you have any like a pass catching running back, or maybe like a sleeper receiver or a sleeper tight end that you think not a lot of people will be on this year that you'll have on a good number of your teams, or is it still too early to make that call?
Not a pass catching running back, but a running back I absolutely love, and I own him in Dynasty. I drafted him in startup. That I've just been, talk about a guy you want to root for is Derrick Henry. I absolutely love Derrick Henry this year in redraft, and for my dynasty team, he's one of these running backs who doesn't have a lot of NFL mileage on him, and I heard him say that he scouted, during the bye, he scouted himself last year to improve himself, and that was partially what accounted for his big blow up. Part of the reason that led me to a dynasty championship last year in the playoffs was he was just, epic all-time running back playoff performance.
Yeah, no, and we're going to get into Derrick Henry later on in the show because I definitely want to ask you about him. But he's a guy that has he's gone up as far as ADP goes, and I think he's going to continue to rise. More to come on that coming up later on in the show. I want to get to the Fantasy Flash here. Thanks to Football Guys, Roto World, and Rob for tonight's rundown. Jay Gruden has said that he is excited for second-year wide receiver Trey Quinn and is, quote, ready to watch him jump into the slot role and dominate the position. Wow. This is from a report in The Athletic. Remember, no Jamison Crowder on this team in 2019 as he will be catching balls from Sam Darnold in New York. Jay Gruden said that Quinn is an option in the slot, but to me, that quote right there represents that he has much more faith in him as only an option. It sounds like he is the answer there. Now, Trey Quinn, if you remember, last year in September, he had a high ankle sprain and was placed on IR to return. He got back in November, then he got hurt again. This is not something that really affected him all that much at SMU. And when he, by the way, when he was playing opposite, what's his name, Cortland Sutton, he had the lowest drop rate among all receivers in last year's draft class. Going to be catching balls from Case Keenum. And I'm going to preface this by before I ask you this, Tyler, by telling you that Trey Quinn, if you want to get him in an FFPC best ball, he's basically free. I mean, before this, he was going in the 26th round. When this quote came out, whatever it was, I think yesterday, he's going to be going up. In fact, he's already been picked as early as the 20th round. I would imagine that will even go up higher. But right now, I mean, if you're drafting, Trey Quinn to me seems like a guy that could catch 70 or even 80 balls this year in Washington. That has a lot of value in the FFPC format.
Yeah, I love slot receivers, especially that late in drafts. If you can get someone who's going to have a lot of volume and, you know, who else is there going to catch passes? Paul Richardson's going to be hurt again, you know, before long. And
maybe Josh Doxson, too. I mean, he's no stranger to the trainer's table.
Exactly. It's someone's going to be there to catch some passes. And Trey Quinn
Jordan
seems
Reed
like
is always hurt, too.
A dart throw. Yeah, I know. It's just a constant. I mean, poor Washington football, professional football club fans. They are, yeah. I'm so glad I'm a Seahawks fan.
Right, yeah. It makes you appreciate what you have for sure. Mid Montana chiming in the chat room right now. Man, that Washington team is going to be bad, man. And the fact that, you know, if they are bad, should mean good news for Trey Quinn because he should be catching a lot of passes as Washington tries to keep up with whoever they're playing this week. So I'm definitely on Trey Quinn. We'll see how high he rises and how far he moves up draft boards going forward. But right now he's a must-get, in my opinion, in all of your best ball teams. Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, says the team believes Marlon Mack, quote, can play all three downs. This was according to an interview broadcast on 1070 AM in Indianapolis. Ballard says he thinks that Mack can carry the load. Remember, the Colts are mentioned as being a possible candidate to sign Le'Veon Bell this past season, but it doesn't sound like they were ever all that serious about it. Coach Frank Wright says he absolutely thinks Mack is a feature back, and he says he's, quote, will look to continue to build that with Marlon. In week 6 last year, Marlon Mack went down, actually hurt a couple of my teams, but then he went for 218 carries, 1,068 rushing yards, and 10 touchdowns in 13 games, including the playoffs. He had 500-yard games within that span. Marlon Mack, talking about him being a true three-down back, and if that is the case, you look at his ADP at the 307 right now. If you go wide receiver in your first 2 picks, Tyler, Marlon Mack seems like a pretty solid choice in the mid-third round based on that.
Agree completely. I love Marlon Mack. There's the only reason he's not being drafted higher, I think, is because of, you know, Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins are both other talented running backs in that backfield, but Marlon Mack is just the most talented one of the 3. So you got to believe that he's going to be given the ability to, you know, to be the lead back there.
This was probably the I would say this is probably the biggest news since the Gronk retirement, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Adam Schefter reported that the Philadelphia Eagles actually traded for Jordan Howard in exchange for a 2020 sixth-round pick that could become a fifth-rounder. Not a lot, essentially, is what Philly gave up to get Jordan Howard. He is going to be 25 this coming season. He went from 5.2 yards per carry as a rookie to 4.1 2 years ago to 3.7 last year. And you look at Jordan Howard joining kind of a semi-crowded backfield in Philly. I mean, we'll see what happens with Jay Ajayi. I don't know where he's going to go. But, you know, and I was making this point earlier. I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but it's sort of like Philadelphia and Doug Peterson, they love interchanging their running backs there. And I don't know how much you can count on Jordan Howard production this year. I mean, he was an accumulator last year and actually put up decent numbers for what he was in, for the amount of touches he got. But I look at Jordan Howard, and it's not exciting to me to draft a non-pass catching running back in an offense that loves to flip their running backs around. He's going at the 804 right now. I know that's not a big price to pay, but I'm probably looking elsewhere. I'm just not that excited about Jordan Howard for 2019, Tyler.
Yeah, neither am I. This is the new Eddie Lacy. Jordan Howard is the new Eddie Lacy.
Yes.
You can just easily see Corey Clement or Josh Adams or, some guy we don't know about off the street just taking this backfield over, and that's way too high a price to pay because we remember 2 years ago when Jordan Howard came out and was good. I mean, he wasn't. The Bears basically gave him away for nothing, and they know Jordan Howard more than we do. So I'm gonna listen to the Bears and listen to one of the top executives in football and to say, okay, I'm gonna leave Jordan Howard alone.
It goes back to that whole thing of like draft guys that you want to root for, and he's such a vanilla type guy, and I know he works hard and what have you, and he's talented to a certain degree, but it's just like, I'm just not jazzed about it. Now, if you let's say you went 0 RB and you go with 4 receivers and a tight end, your first 5 picks, and then maybe you draft a running back and then maybe another receiver, another tight end, and you're looking at trying to get a second running back in the 8th round. Okay, in that scenario, I guess you could make a decent case for it, but it still would not be my favorite, not the way I would build a team. Just Jordan Howard, I think that this is sort of why I buried it on here. It's just, to me, this is sort of a non-story. I'm not excited about this whatsoever. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am in this case. As long as we're talking about Adam Schefter reports on Twitter, he also talked about Isaiah Crowell moving on from the Jets, heading out west, signing a 1-year deal up to $2.5 million with the Oakland Raiders. Now, it doesn't sound. To me, the fact that they're signing him to this deal suggests that Marshawn Lynch is going to be done. He is 33 years old, coming up on the 2019 season. Crowell last year, 143 carries, 685 yards. That was good enough for 4.79 yards per carry. But before you get too excited, remember that he had a 219-yard rushing game this past year that went into that as well. He's probably going to make the roster. I mean, Doug Martin's a free agent. DeAndre Washington, Jalen Richard, not exactly world beaters there. But again, Tyler, you talk about running backs that you want to get excited about. I'm moving past Jordan Howard in the 8th. Quite frankly, I don't know how excited I am about Isaiah Crowell in the 21st. It's not a whole lot right now. I feel like you look at the Raiders and what they're going to do in the draft with all those picks. If they draft a rookie on day 1 or day 2, I'm going to be much more excited about that than I am about Isaiah Crowell in the 21st.
Yeah, I'm actually way more excited about Jalen Richard in Oakland. People are down on him, but 68 catches last year, 600 yards. John Gruden speaks really highly of him and said a ton of stuff. We got to get him on the field more. We got to get him the ball more. He is one of those pass-catching running backs that hasn't really been given much opportunity to show us what he can do on the ground, but I could see it happening. I mean, he averaged almost 5 yards a carry last year and 55 carries. So he, to me, is the clear running back to own, even if they draft a rookie in Oakland.
Yeah, well, it's again, the Raiders, the Browns, the Giants. I think three of the teams I'm most excited to see what they do going forward in the draft. And well, maybe not so much the Browns because I think their team is basically built. But for the teams with a lot of ammo, like the Giants, like the Raiders, be interesting to see what they do. And finally, we said goodbye to Rob Gronkowski this week as he hung it up at the age of 29. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, quote, "Wouldn't be shocked if Gronk decides to come back and return." This appeared on Adam Schefter's Twitter feed. He was on ESPN's Get Up earlier this week. Drew Rosenhaus said that Gronk told him football is really a thing in the past, but Rosenhaus wasn't convinced that would not change. The quote from him, "Let's just say hypothetically Tom Brady gave him a call and said, 'Rob, I need you.' I wouldn't be shocked if he came back to play a few games." I own Rob Gronkowski on one Dynasty roster, and I don't have to cut down for that particular league yet. And actually, it's a super late cut down. It might not have to cut down until like the week before the season starts, so I'll have that luxury. Tyler, I'm keeping him around because there's no penalty and there's nothing to be gained for dropping him right now. I don't think he's coming back. I think he's done. Do you also think he's done? Would you with Dynasty cuts coming up with the FFPC on Sunday, is Gronkowski worth one of those 16 valuable roster spots?
I think in FFPC, you probably can't keep him, but I am 100% sure that Rob Gronkowski is going to come running out of the tunnel like the Ultimate Warrior come like week 12 or whatever and join the New England Patriots for another Super Bowl run. I can see it all happening right now. It makes perfect. It's just like the most evil, brilliant New England Patriots strategy. They went to him and said, "Gronk, we just need you to retire. We need some salary cap help. We're bringing you back in week 12. Just rest your body," and then they're gonna run him back out onto the field for another Super Bowl run. It's all happening. If you have the space, you definitely need to keep Gronk because week 14, 15, 16, he's gonna probably win you another championship.
And if that happens, he would come out like he'd have like the Ultimate Warrior. He'd have the wig on. He'd have like the tassels coming off the arms. He'd have like the tassels on the boots, like on his socks. He'd paint his face and everything. He'd come into the Ultimate Warrior music. Oh man, I want this to happen now. I didn't consider that. That would be such a Gronk thing to do.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, man. It would be tremendous if it happened. We got a few minutes left in the show. Let's answer a few emails here that came in this week. First one we're going to go to is Jim in Parsons, Kansas. Hey, guys, which Derrick Henry do you expect to see in 2019? The one we saw for most of 2018 or the beast that showed up for the last several weeks? Thanks, gentlemen. That's Jim in Parsons, Kansas. You touched on this before, Tyler. I think you were of the opinion that we saw the real Derrick Henry the last month and a half of the season when he was running roughshod over defenses in the NFL. Do you expect to see that continue?
Yes, Derrick Henry, buy now while you can. He's a beast. He runs angry. The Tennessee Titans offense, you have to remember that first over half of the season, maybe all of the season, their offense was in terrible shape. They didn't know what they're doing. They're not giving Derrick Henry the ball in a zone blocking scheme, and they just didn't have it figured out. They're trying to make Dion Lewis into a 3-down back. I think they have it figured out. Everything the coach is saying, all the words out of there are Derrick Henry is a lead back. We're going to feed him the ball, and his work ethic is second to none. His physicality, he's a linebacker who plays running back. I just love it for 16-game season. If he finally gets the chance to get that volume, to get that near 260, 270 kind of rushing touches, he'll win you some championships.
So now let me ask you this as a selfish question here. Now I'm in the shadows of Lambeau Field in Northeast Wisconsin, and the Packers just got a new head coach in Matt LaFleur, who was the offensive coordinator for the Titans last year. If you are looking at drafting any Packers this year, be it Jones or Adams or Williams or Rodgers or Graham or whoever, are you at all concerned that the dude who is head coaching this team, that the dude who is calling the plays for this team, was the guy who couldn't really figure out the Titans' offense and unleashing Derrick Henry on the rest of the NFL until the last 4 weeks of the season. Should that be a concern if you're looking at drafting Packers this year?
Yeah, I was befuddled by the Matt LaFleur hiring because the Titans' offense I thought was terrible, and the numbers say it was terrible, and so I am concerned, but anyone's better than Mike McCarthy. So you guys, I mean, basically Aaron Rodgers is the player coach of the team, like old school Joe Montana days. So yeah, Matt LaFleur is just the guy they're paying to take some heat off of Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers is the coach of your team now, and that bodes well. Speaking about an FU season, I think Aaron Rodgers is in for an FU season, and I'd be worried if I were the Chicago Bears come week 1.
You know, and it goes back to the whole standpoint of, like, you know, all the reports, at least up here, said that there was a rift. And not even reports up here. Reports everywhere said that there was a rift between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. And I think what made Mike McCarthy great was also caused his downfall in the respect of when he got the head coaching job, he had a plan and he had a vision and he knew what he wanted to do, and that ultimately got them to a Super Bowl and got him a Super Bowl ring. But I think that's what caused, you know, him tumbling down too, because as the NFL changed and as offenses changed and the players he was coaching, what they wanted to do changed, he refused to change with it. You know, he knew what it took to get to the mountaintop, but he didn't have it within him to stay there. He wasn't willing to change. And I think that's ultimately, you know, kind of, because I think, like, watching the Packers and this offense really slog along, it was so obvious to me that there needed to be an injection of life, an injection of creativity, some more modernism in the play calls. And Mike McCarthy just wasn't going to do that. And I think Aaron Rodgers knew that he wasn't going to change. And that's ultimately, I think, why the Packers parted ways with McCarthy and went for basically his polar opposite. You know, a younger, modern guy in the Sean McVay mold. Like, you could not get more opposite. And I know that Aaron Rodgers is very excited about that. And we'll see what happens, because I think that, you know, in the same mold with Roethlisberger, as you pointed out, I think Rodgers could have that type of season this year as well. You know, you get all those rookie receivers from last year with a year's experience under their belts. You have Devontae Adams, who's coming off the best season of his career. We'll see what they do in the draft. I mean, they could add some playmakers there too. You get, you know, a guy like T.J. Hawkinson or Noah Fant in the first round, or Irv Smith or anybody like that, a seam stretching tight end. Things could be very, very different on that Packers offense quickly. All right, we have to get to another email here, and this actually also came from the chat room. Waskai wanted to know your views on Royce Freeman versus Lindsey, and that goes in with Rick in Pomona, California. His email: what's up, Balky and Tyler? Taking their current fantasy values into account, who is the better pick for 2019, Philip Lindsey or Royce Freeman? And before you answer that question, Tyler, I will tell you right now, as I look at the FFPC Best Ball ADP, Philip Lindsey is currently going in the mid-4th at the 405. Royce Freeman's ADP, as it stands right now, is all the way down at the 907. So you can get Lindsey if you want, but you're going to have to pay a premium to get him, and that premium is 5 rounds earlier than Royce Freeman. If you could only have one of those guys in your team, who would it be? Or would you invest in both of them to lock up that Denver ground game?
Yeah, I'm investing in Royce Freeman here. It's funny that he's even lower ADP than Jordan Howard. Royce Freeman's just a better player. If you look at the advanced metrics on, like, the offensive line grades, for some reason the offensive line in Denver was much better at run blocking for Philip Lindsey, but, you know, by a wide margin. But that says to me that perhaps there's just some variance there, and they'll figure out how to block for this guy. Again, that's an offense last year that was pretty terrible. They should be better. Philip Lindsey is, you know, a 5'8", 185-pound running back or something like this. It's not a lot of I don't invest a lot in guys like that when I can have Royce Freeman, who's a much better value and as good a player to my eye anyway.
If somebody offered you, I can't use 2019 as an example because we know where all the picks are, but if somebody offered, if you own Phillip Lindsay in a Dynasty league and somebody was going to give you a 2020 first round pick for him, Tyler, would you do it?
Easy sell. Phillip Lindsay, again, I always look at draft capital the teams spend on these players as well, because that's just the amount of leeway they're going to get. And Royce Freeman has it, Phillip Lindsay doesn't. If you can trade Phillip Lindsay, who could be a flash in the pan, or he could turn into a Tariq Cohen type player, but we don't really know. If you can get a 2020 first right now for him, I would do it all day.
Yeah, I have him in one Dynasty league. I've been shopping around. I haven't had any bites yet, and I think that might be because, nobody's in that league is in, quote-unquote draft mode yet, but I'm trying to ship him off in that league. I already whiffed on Gronk, but based on what you said tonight, maybe I'll keep him around for a while to see what happens with that. Let's move on to Bill in Birmingham. What's the latest on Marquise Lee? Is he in for a big bounce back with Nick Foles tossing him the rock? Keep up the good work. That is Bill in Birmingham. Bill Marquise Lee, and I think I just read this this afternoon or yesterday afternoon that, he got hurt in the preseason, and it sounds like he'll be back late in this year's preseason, which, we've seen these ACL tears in the past, and they usually go, at least the reported recovery is like 4 or 5 months sometimes faster than that. So the fact that they're talking about this like being even longer than a 12-month injury, I have my concerns about Marquise Lee right now, Tyler.
Yeah, well, as well you should. I mean, this is a guy whose best season is 851 yards, but he only, he's consistently in the 50% catch rate of receivers, so he's not a reliable pair of hands. And he's, obviously, I said already, Big Dick Nick's going to take the Jaguars offense to new heights, but he's 27 years old. He's not coming back from an injury the way you would hope. D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole are both there and should both be fantasy relevant, even though, especially Keelan Cole had one of the worst seasons ever. I got some love for Keelan Cole still, and I think that he's a much more interesting flyer, late round flyer.
What about D.D. Westbrook? Does he factor into it at all?
Yeah, I mean, D.D. Westbrook, I think is the wide receiver to own there, and I think D.D.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Will be good. Keelan Cole had such a bad year that I don't know what his ADP is, but I'm sure it's really low. I think D.D.'s probably being owned in the top half of drafts for sure.
I can tell you, I don't think any of them are being picked particularly high in best ball right now. I'm looking them up here. Marquise Lee is currently at the 2306. So, I mean, nothing. Hey, you just get him wherever. Keelan Cole even cheaper at the 2612. And D.D. Westbrook at the, oh, my God, he's at the 1308.
Yeah. That's about what I would expect, though. D.D. Westbrook's shown the most of all three of those guys, and you got to think that he'll keep progressing. He's now, going to be a third-year player. So I like him for a third-year breakout. I also like Keelan Cole for a third-year breakout. He's essentially free, and he had, not this past season, the season before, he had, an incredible run with Blake Bortles throwing him the ball. So it's got to get better.
Let's wrap things up here with one final email from Max in Denver. How close can Jared Cook come to his 2018 numbers with Drew Brees? All right, sorry about that. Technical difficulties here. Drew Brees throwing him the rock in 2019 as opposed to Derek Carr in 2018. Tyler, last year, 68 catches for 896 yards and 6 touchdowns. Does he come close to that this year? Does he supersede those numbers this year with the Saints that he put up with the Raiders last year? Give me your take on Jared Cook here.
Yeah, this is good value. We were talking previously about Hunter Henry possibly being bad value. I think Jared Cook is good value because everyone remembers the halcyon days of Jimmy Graham and Drew Brees hooking up. You know they love throwing it to tight ends. Jared Cook, doesn't like to block or do anything but catch passes, so I think that'll be the perfect fit for Drew Brees, and I see him as a top 5 tight end again this year.
Yeah, and if that is the case, yeah, sorry about that. And if that is the case, Jared Cook is a fantastic value right now. He is going as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's tight end 9 right now at the 601. So a great deal can be had on Jared Cook if you are drafting right now as well. And we got a great deal tonight, upgrading the co-host chair as Tyler Jackson, the 750, number 30, champion from last year. He handled it with aplomb. You did great tonight, my friend. I want to thank you so much for coming aboard the HSFF Hour, making your debut. Congratulations on the Dynasty title last year. Hopefully there are many more in your future, dude. Best of luck with the movie as well. As we previewed it earlier, we talked about it again. Remember, it is in theaters now. It's also streaming. Go see it. It's got Mel Gibson. It's got Vince Vaughn. It is called Dragged Across Concrete. And you dragged is the wrong word, but you brought us on a fantasy journey tonight, my friend. It was a lot of fun, very entertaining. I had a great time. I know the listeners did too. Thank you so much for hopping aboard this week, my man.
Thank you very much for having me, and I was just kidding about Dave. You can't do the show without Dave. But if you decide to do the show without Dave, I will be available I'll be holding my Friday nights open from now until forever, just waiting for that call.
Yeah, well, listen, next we're going to put that to the test. We're going to switch the show to Sundays, and then we're going to see if you're going to pick to fill in for Dave on Oscar night or if you're going to go to the Oscars. That's going to be the true test. And we're going to see how your loyalty to the show is, my friend. But seriously, you'll be on the short list in the future if we ever need to fill in for Dave again. Really appreciate it, dude. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the upcoming NFL draft as well.
Thank you. You as well. Have a good weekend, and hope all the other fantasy football degenerates out there enjoy their weekend as well.
Absolutely. Tyler Jackson, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our show tonight. I want to thank him for hopping on the blower here tonight and filling in for Dave Gurzak. Really appreciate that. What a fun show. God, it went by so fast. I don't know if it's because I did a podcast right before this or not, but it was a lot of fun. And I should promote that a little bit more, and I'll put it on my Twitter. But Dave Journey and Ron McLeese on the Dynasty Football 101 podcast. That is on Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports, the Legend Sports Network. The link will be up sometime this weekend. I'll tweet that out. We got into a lot of FFPC Dynasty stuff. It was an aggregate of stuff I've been told by a lot of high-stakes Dynasty players over the years, so hopefully you can get some enjoyment out of that. I think we might do it again. I think I'm going to hop on that podcast again. They're going to do some divisional previews coming up, and Ron is a Bears fan, and I'm obviously a Packers fan, so maybe we'll do an NFC North preview there. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun. It was a fun night talking fantasy football. My God, it was essentially 3 hours worth of that. I've had college basketball on. The Brewers are getting drilled. Everything you'd want in sports tonight. So really great to see everything coming together here in March as we lead up to the NFL draft. I want to thank once again Tyler Jackson. I want to thank the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course each and every one of you for listening in the chat room. Shout out to all the stalwarts that were in there tonight. Mint Montana, Wasp Guy, Two-Packer, the whole crew was all in there tonight. Thanks so much, guys. All right, so next week, here's what's going on. No Dave Gurzak again. However, we have a special show next week. This was something that was pitched to me, and I agreed to it, and I think it's going to be good. I am actually going to be on vacation next week, but the show will still play as normal at 10/9 Central next Friday. You'll be able to go in the chat room, I think. Maybe not. Maybe there won't be a chat room open. I got to talk to BTR about that and figure out how it's going to work. But if you remember the Noah Blum episode last year, or Noah Bloom, excuse me, when we kind of pre-recorded it and talked Dynasty. That's what you're going to be getting again this coming Friday. It's going to be a pre-recorded episode. I don't think there's anything super dated in there. But basically, here's what it is. It's Biplab Mandel, a former high-stakes champ at the Dynasty level with the FFPC. Well, multiple levels, really. And another former FFPC Dynasty champ, Steve Lee. These guys have both been on the HSFF Hour before. They're going to be on the show this Friday, and they have very, very differing opinions and ways that they like to build their Dynasty teams. With the end goal being championships, they have different journeys on how to get there. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some player analysis of what you should be doing with certain players in fantasy football right now as far as Dynasty goes, whether you should be dealing them, whether you should be standing pat, whether you should be trading for them. That is all going to be next week at 10/9 Central with myself, Biplab Mandel, and, of course, Steve Lee. So great stuff there. Check out all of the Dynasty Orphans that we have going on at myffpc.com. I think we're down to right around 10 of them. And then we have Dynasty Maiden Drafts going on starting April 6th. Plenty of spots available in that. But hustle up and get in before they fill up because they are going fast. Plenty of best ball, plenty of Superflex, all going on right now at myffpc.com. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Really appreciate it. We will sort of be back next week at 10/9 Central. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. That was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
We're on the cement floor, even more so if we on tour. Me and E explore the country, wondering about the evening before. Trying to explain where the time went, while other rappers find a studio to grind in. Kinda like
I've never I don't know what it like. I don't know if it's because I'm busier or what have you, but I feel like at this point the last few years, and I probably should have brought this up on the show. This point at the last few years, I've made like a lot of Dynasty deals in preparation for 2019. I really haven't made that many so far in the offseason, and I feel like I'm slacking because there's definitely players I have on my teams that I need to move right now. Maybe that's what we'll have to delve into this as we get closer to the NFL draft, because I think a lot of times people will want to move veterans before they quote unquote lose their jobs with an NFL team investing a round 1 to 3 pick on a certain player. But there's definitely players I want to move. There's definitely players I want to acquire. But there's definitely more I want to move right now. Remember to get those FFPC Dynasty Leagues cut down to 16 players by Sunday night at midnight Pacific, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate all the ears tonight. It has been a harrowing week for me. Can't wait for next week and the Mandel Lee Show. That is going to be really fantastic stuff. We'll talk to you later, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.